Hey, what's up, internet people on the computer? Today, I'm going to do my rendition of trying to quote-unquote fix the Smash Bros. Roster. If you're not aware, I like Smash Bros. A decent bit. Primarily, I do Minecraft. I like Pokemon, but Smash Bros. Is something I've enjoyed pretty much my entire childhood and teenage, whatever, right, time. And I have opinions about the Smash Bros. Roster. Do I think it's, like, bad? No, of course not. I just think that if we are gonna ever get a Smash 6, which, considering the Switch 2 is coming out soon, etc., I think it's pretty possible that we would get a new Smash game maybe in 2026, 2027, probably, like, late, because I feel like Smash Ultimate didn't really end that long ago, at least in terms of updating it. So, regardless, enough, I'm going to go over the roster and try to think of which ones to keep and which ones to delete, because in my opinion, if they were to do a Smash 6, you wouldn't keep everything that was already there, right? You wouldn't keep all the characters, you'd want to cut some of them away, because I do think there's a bit of bloat potentially when it comes to the roster. Also, between Echo Fighters and whatnot, I don't even know if they're on here. I don't think they are. Maybe they are. I guess we're going to have to wait and find out. I don't remember. Echo Fighters and stuff we'll look into in a short while. Either way, let's start. Mario, of course, gotta keep him. In my opinion, I think if you have to keep, if you really have to keep a roster together, you have to keep the Smash 64 roster. I think, at least, right? Those are the default, I think it's like 8 or 12 characters that you have to keep 100%. There is no debate to be had, which means that DK, Link, Samus, Yoshi, Kirby, Fox, as much as I don't think Star Fox or whatever the game is called is like super relevant, it's not irrelevant, and Fox is so iconic in Smash Bros. You gotta keep him. Pikachu, of course. I think Luigi you keep. I think Ness, as much as I also don't think Earthbound or whatever it's called is as, or Mother, whichever of the things is the actual thing. I've never played it. I'm sure that's relevant maybe in like Japan or something, but I feel like in the West maybe it's not as relevant, but I guess you still want to keep it. Captain Falcon's like a weird one because you have to keep him because he's iconic, but I think he's iconic because of Smash and not because of the game he's from. I forgot. I don't even know what the game's called. I just forgot. But the racing game, right, that he's from. I think he's just too iconic. You can't really get rid of him. Jigglypuff makes sense. I would say, honestly, if you're looking at Pokemon and trying to think of how the Pokemon represent, parts of Pokemon, Pikachu is just Pokemon. It represents, Pikachu represents the iconic. It's the guy from Pokemon. And then Jigglypuff, I honestly would say, is maybe like an anime rep for Pokemon. It's kind of like one of the most iconic anime Pokemon, right? I would say, maybe, for Pokemon. So I guess that makes sense. Peach, of course, you keep. Bowser, you keep. Now, here's a take. Ice Climbers? Hell no. Look, it's a funny gimmick. Maybe. It was, like, silly, but it's a gimmick. I think having Ice Climbers in Smash is a bit of a gimmick. I don't think you need to keep him. It's a thing where I honestly think if you're not somebody who played maybe, like, Smash up until Brawl, I guess, right? If you didn't play Smash Melee or Smash Brawl, then you're not going to be as attached to Ice Climbers being in Smash. The only reason people cared extra about the existence of Ice Climbers is because they got removed in Smash, like, 4 or something, right? They got removed for one of the games, or they weren't really in consideration for one of the games. This is the only reason why people are extra attached to it, because it's a gimmick. It makes sense to cut them, I think, in my opinion, at least. It makes sense to get rid of them. Next up, you have Sheik and Zelda. The thing with Sheik and Zelda is, I think, in my very humble, honest opinion, I kind of liked them being one character together more. Maybe that's a hot take. I kind of liked that character being one. I guess it makes sense with Zelda probably being expanded upon within The Legends of Zelda as a character and gaining more tech that you could implement into Zelda as like a more magic-based character as opposed to Link being the swordsman, right? But I liked them being the same character. I don't know. I would say, of course, Zelda you have to keep because of Legends of Zelda. Sheik, I would put in maybe. I think probably you would still keep Sheik. I don't think you would only keep like the 100%, you'd probably keep the ones in maybe, but this is like a maybe. I didn't play Legends of Zelda, so this is just probably me being completely uninformed on why Sheik should be in, but I couldn't tell you why, like game related wise, it's that important. Maybe there is a Zelda game that's really, really relevant where Sheik appeared that makes sense, but to me, that's not the case. Dr. Mario, you'd get rid of Dr. Mario. I think Dr. Mario is not like a necessary Mario rep. There's so many Mario reps already, you do not need Dr. Mario. Same with Pichu, you already have plenty of Pokemon that are represented, you do not need Pichu. Now, Falcon, whatever, right? Captain, no, this is Captain Falco, whatever, right? You know what I mean. This guy, I would say you don't really need him. He kind of feels like Fox, but like only a little different, and I think that's kind of redundant. Maybe you make him an Echo Fighter, right? You make Falco an Echo Fighter of Fox and say like, oh, he's just an Echo Fighter, but he is the same character, he's just not a full separate one, which is admittedly not obviously correct. There's plenty of stuff about the moveset that is at least different enough to not really be fully Echo Fighter-esque, but I guess like Ryu and Ken I think are pretty distinct to an extent, and are they separate characters or Echo Fighter? I don't even know, maybe I'm actually talking out of my ass. Either way, I would put Falco in maybe, and honestly maybe even in delete, because Star Fox I don't think it needs 3 reps when there's other franchises that have 1 or 2 that are, you know, way more popular. Look at Animal Crossing, for example. Got Villager and Isabelle. Animal Crossing is infinitely more popular than Star Fox or whatever, right? So that would make sense. Marth, you have to keep. Toon Link? Or no, this is not. This is Young Link. Young Link? Toon Link is like this one, yeah. I'll put him in maybe for now. I think this is the one that we revisit at the end to be like, yeah, maybe not. Ganondorf, 100%. Mewtwo, I think, is also too iconic of a Pokemon to not include again, in my opinion. Then we get to like Roy. Now, I'm gonna say something that should come as absolutely no surprise. I have no idea what Fire Emblem really is about. I've never played it. Roy seems like he, or at least Fire Emblem in general, to me just feels like it's, again, probably way more popular and relevant in Japan than it is here. And keep in mind, Nintendo is, of course, Japanese and also very prominent in America. I guess I'm not American, but you know what I mean. And I assume Roy is just probably makes a lot more sense for the Japanese audience to be there. But, like, I don't know, man. To me, I'd honestly just say cut him. I don't know. I don't know, man. Then, Game & Watch. Game & Watch is also like a gimmick character, but I think Game & Watch represents vintage, like, video gaming in a pretty solid way. I know of Game & Watch because of Smash Bros, but afterwards, I've seen Game & Watch, like, actual games from Game & Watch exist around and be like, oh, that guy, and notice that it's, like, actually a relevant character to an extent. I do think he is a bit gimmicky, so you could cut him, but I guess that also depends on how many you cut, so I'll put him in a maybe for now. But I do think he's a very iconic character, but you could probably get rid of him, I don't know. Meta Knight's very important Kirby character. Kirby also is very big, has, I think, 3 reps, right, with King Dedede. Has it been that long since we've had a new Kirby rep? I honestly think a new Kirby rep could be cool. I don't really know what you would do. From my perspective, which is probably very warped and inaccurate, you could get the guy from Kirby Epic Yarn. That one was kind of cool. The blue guy, probably not really a relevant character at all. You could get one of the bosses, maybe, right? One of the evil guys. That could be fun. But for the rest, yeah, I don't know. Pit, you'd probably keep for that's Kid Icarus, right? Kid Icarus rep. Zero Suit Samus. Could you not kind of just do the same thing like Zelda and Sheik, probably, right? Where you just make that another part of the character, like the down B or something is the transform. I don't remember what the down B for Zero Suit Samus is. I think the one where she does. Well, I guess the Zero Suit Samus one doesn't really matter, right? It matters to both the Samus and Zero Suit Samus. The Samus one, down B, is one goes up a little bit and drops the little bomb, and then for Zero Suit Samus, it's the one where she does like a fucking backflip, right? Or something. get rid of those. I don't know, man. That's just, you can just make it one character again. I think that's cool. It also makes the roster a little smaller. And then you could even make it so in the character select screen, you could default to starting as Sheik or starting as ZSS and then going backwards, right? I think that would make sense. Wario, as much as I think Wario in Smash is a bit of a gimmick, it is a Nintendo character, and popularity-wise, it is like, he's so huge. He should probably be there. So you kind of have to keep him. There's also the debate of Waluigi. I think that's also kind of a gimmick. What would you do with Waluigi? In my opinion, if you want to include Waluigi, you have to make Waluigi like represent other parts of the Mario like franchise in terms of games, probably, right? In a way, I know people have often said like Mario Sports, for example, would be cool, but like, I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense for Waluigi to represent. Maybe there's other characters that do that better, but it could be fun. Maybe Mario Party. I don't know if that would make any sense. I don't know if Waluigi's even in. He probably is, but you know what I mean. He'd have to represent something unique, because I don't think just adding another Mario character that's just kind of like a, oh yeah, he's there, would be that interesting. Now, Snake makes sense, I think, to include, right? They just need to buff his ass again, bro. They nerfed him in Smash 4, right? Or something? Or was it the Ultimate? They nerfed his ass? Did they nerf ZSS's ass? Just bring his ass back. I don't know, man. He was cheeked up in Brawl, bring him back. I'm just saying, alright. Ike, to me, right? This is, again, not somebody who does Fire Emblem or watches or knows much about Fire Emblem. Ike, to me, feels like a good inclusion for keeping like more Fire Emblem rep. To me, at least, I started Smash with playing Brawl, so to me it was always Marth and Ike for your, what's it called, Fire Emblem rep. So would make sense for me bias wise to be like, oh, you should keep that, but you know, whatever. Pokemon Trainer, I think it's weird because my opinion of Pokemon Trainer has kind of shifted, because Charizard was a standalone character at one point, right? I do like Pokemon Trainer. I think Gen 1, of course, is very prominent and very relevant to include. Does Gen 1 already have 3 reps? Yes. Should Charizard be in Smash Bros? Yes, of course. As much as you could argue, like, no, because he's already got too much. It's Charizard. Squirtle, I think, is also pretty popular. I think Ivysaur is definitely the least popular out of the 3 that are in there, but I guess if you had to, I would pick Bulbasaur, personally, over Ivysaur. I think it'd be fun, but I understand how they want to do, like, oh, you know, one of every evolution stage. So I guess that's fine, but, yeah, I would keep Pokemon Trainer, probably. Diddy Kong, unfortunate name, but I think makes sense to keep. I think DK rep would be nice to get maybe a bit more of, although if I am going to be completely honest, I'm not like the biggest fan of K. Rool in Smash. I think K. Rool in Smash is fine. It makes sense, right, to want that. But I also think, as much as Donkey Kong is huge as like a franchise, I think that it's like the attention that the DK franchise gets is like 95% just DK, and the rest nobody really cares about that much. It could be fun to, you know, get like a Cranky Kong or something, or the female characters that I keep forgetting the name of. But yeah, I think Diddy Kong is fun. I think it'd be nice. Now then you have Lucas. I would debate that it's kind of a Zero Suit Samus and what's it called, Sheik situation, but this is again someone who's not, I've not played Earthbound or Mother. I don't understand where Lucas specifically comes from compared to Ness. To me, when you look at Ness and Lucas and Earthbound, having Ness as just your one rep would, to me, be like fine. That would make sense, right? I don't really feel like it's necessary for them to both be there, especially when they're not the same character, but they have a lot of similarities. So this would be the same argument for Sheik or even Falco. It's kind of just the same argument for everyone but Game & Watch in this maybe tier. It's like, do you need another character that does the same thing, pretty much, right? Or can you just keep what is already there and just maybe make it an alternative like Echo Fighter or something, or whatever, right? So anyways, Sonic, of course. King DDD, I think you should keep. I think there's a debate potentially, but I think you should keep him. Olimar, you need Pikmin rep. I think that's very relevant. Lucario, honestly, maybe a hot take, but I really don't know if you need Lucario. I think Lucario is cool. I think it's a cool Pokemon. I want to say that the reason Lucario is in Smash is probably because of the whole like Gen 4 and the movie thing, like having some form of representation there is good. I do also have a heavy bias towards Gen 4. I think Gen 4 is my favorite generation probably for Pokemon. But I don't know if it's necessary to have a Gen 4 Pokemon in Smash. I think Lucario is a cool Pokemon. Do I think it's like a relevant enough Pokemon to be in Smash Bros? No, not really. I do think it has some interesting gameplay going on, right? I think that there's an argument maybe where like gameplay wise it offers something unique. I think the aura meter and stuff like that is cool, but I think there's other Pokemon that could maybe be more fit to be in Smash Bros, right? That could be more fun. The only potential downside I think here, it's a very niche and not that relevant downside, is that in terms of Pokemon type representation, you're getting essentially a starter, and then you have starters, and then you have if you keep Greninja, that's a starter, and Incineroar is another starter if you were to keep him. We'll get to that later, but like it's like I think Lucario's like you're fine not having Lucario in. Rob to me feels similar to Game & Watch. I think it's another situation where I think it's funny. Rob's a funny gimmick character to have in. I don't know where I think is I don't know how relevant Rob is or what his franchise really is like from. If I'm being fully honest, Rob I only know of because of Smash Bros. To me it's like I don't know. The reason I put it in maybe is like I probably don't understand enough about why Rob should be in Smash. So to me I would delete him, but probably he should be in maybe. But I just don't understand that. Toon Link, I would also put in maybe. The only problem I have with taking out both of the extra links is that your Zelda rep is quite low here, right? I think Legends of Zelda is a huge franchise and you're not really getting much rep from Legends of Zelda, but I also think it's like, do you really want your Legends of Zelda rep to just be 3 links and then the other 2 characters, or do you want to leave or make up some room for some more interesting characters to get added? I don't know. In my opinion, I think I'm not a Legends of Zelda like player. I've never played Legends of Zelda games, but like in my opinion, I would much rather have that, right? Same thing like I mentioned as well with Pokemon. I love Pokemon. I'm not going to pretend like I'm the biggest fan of most of the Pokemon being in Smash Bros. Being the starters. It would be super cool if you had some more unique Pokemon that would, of course, need to make sense. But it's purely based off of popularity. But it'd be much cooler if you had a different, selection of Pokemon, different types of Pokemon, different whatever Pokemon, like a dragon or something, right? I don't know which dragon type Pokemon would make the most sense, but like, it'd be super cool if you had that instead of just another starter. Like if Smash Bros comes around out at the same time, Jesus, if Smash Bros comes out, Smash Bros 6 comes out around the same time as Gen 10, which is probably like 2026, 2027, right? And they add like the grass starter from Gen 10 to Smash Bros. I'm gonna be like, it's cool that they add another Pokemon, but like, really, can't we just add like, I don't know, Necrozma? That's not really the one I would want, but I'm just saying, like, couldn't you just add one that's a bit more interesting, maybe? I don't know. Okay. Wolf, I think you delete. In my opinion, I think Wolf is... you do not need 3 Star Fox characters. Wolf does offer a bit more unique gameplay than Falco. Again, I don't really know Star Fox like that. I don't know how relevant Wolf is to have... compared to how relevant Wolf is in Star Fox. He might be the second most or third most, right? Whatever, right? But there's also like the frog and whatever. Like, they just kind of feel like the same kind of rep again. It's like I would like the frog. I don't even know what the frog does, but we'd have a frog in Smash. That's funny as hell, bro. I'd much rather have the frog than another furry. No offense, of course, but I'm just saying, like, they're just the same character. Or, well, not, they play differently, but they've looked almost the same-ish, similar. Anyways, villager you keep, of course. I do think if Animal Crossing wasn't that big, I would say keep just Isabelle and get rid of villager, but it is what it is. I think this makes sense. Mega Man, huge franchise, W rep, makes sense. Wii Fit Trainer, I think for like the Wii legacy, it makes sense to maybe keep Wii Fit Trainer. I do think it's like slightly gimmicky, but I do think, like, I don't know, it does. The Wii is huge, right? You kind of want to keep the Wii represented in some way, but then I guess there's also the Miis, which also kind of, I mean, they represent Nintendo really, not specifically an era of the games. I'll put Wii Fit Trainer in maybe, because I think it's debatable. If you have a lot of characters, you could maybe get rid of Wii Fit, but I also think, similar to Game & Watch, they would just be one of the characters that make a bit more sense to keep. Rosalina, maybe a hot take. I think it's debatable. I love Mario Galaxy. I think Mario Galaxy is fantastic, but do you need a rep from Mario Galaxy? I guess Rosalina maybe represents more 3D Mario. You know, I don't really think there is a proper 3D Mario rep besides Mario. Maybe in the next Smash Bros. They'll make Mario have Cappy or something, right, within his character in some way, shape, or form. Probably would. But I guess it makes sense. I think it's a good rep to have. It's just that it's Mario again, and Mario already has so many characters, so it's like, I want to cut some Mario. I've already cut Dr. Mario. There will probably be some upcoming ones that get cut, but you know, Little Mac. I'm gonna be honest. Little Mac's from like Punch Out or something, right? I'm sure iconic game. I've never played it, but I'm aware that Little Mac is probably much more relevant than I think, and I think compared to one of the other ones here that maybe aren't in, I think Game & Watch will probably end up getting selected again. But I think it makes sense to keep Little Mac, right? Probably. I think you'd probably want to. I think Game & Watch really should be in. I'm looking at it and I'm like, yeah, I think it makes sense. I don't know where specifically Game & Watch would land, like here-ish, right? I think Game & Watch was Game & Watch is a Melee, right? I don't know, maybe not. I have no clue. I didn't play Melee when it came out, so I don't have like a rough timeline progression in my brain, so I don't know. Next up, Greninja. Look, I understand Greninja is popular. I think it would make sense to keep Greninja because it's a popular character. You probably should keep Greninja around in the roster, but it kind of feels like a Lucario situation again, where it's like, is it a popular Pokemon? Yes, but like, you really need it? I don't know. I think there's a very clear distinction though between the Greninja's popularity and Lucario's popularity. I do think makes a bit more sense to keep. The Mii Fighters, I would say Mii Fighters becomes maybe one Mii Fighter. I guess, I mean, it's like Mii Brawler, Mii Swordsman, and Mii Gunner or whatever. It just feels like a lot. I don't know if that's necessary. So I would say you keep one of them, and then you delete the rest, and maybe you just keep one of them that's underrepresented in terms of like type of gameplay. Which I would say is probably the Gunner, right? Maybe? I don't know. You just keep one. You delete like, or maybe you base it off of like an iconic like part of the Wii Sports or something or whatever. So you just keep one. I'll say you keep the Mii Gunner, for example. I don't think it could just be the Brawler. I'll just put the Brawler because it's fine. I don't think it really matters. Anyways, Paulina or something, right? From Kid Icarus, I'm sure makes sense to keep. So sure, right? I'm unfamiliar with Kid Icarus like that, but I know it's got enough relevance to make sense. Dark Pit's an Echo Fighter anyways, so you just put him in the maybe category. He's an Echo Fighter. It doesn't really matter. I think you can just keep them as Echo Fighters. Pac-Man, iconic. Lucina, Echo Fighter. Robin, I think this is right. This is another situation where I have no clue how relevant this character actually is in the grand scheme of Fire Emblem. I do recall I had this talk regarding the Smash Bros. Roster like a while ago with some people, and they gave their thoughts on which characters make the most sense to keep, and I think it was either like Robin or Byleth or both that they said would make the most sense to keep alongside like Marth and Ike. So I'm gonna trust their word for it. If that's incorrect, I'm sorry. It could have also been Corrin, I don't know. But I'm gonna just assume that that's correct, and you keep Robin as a character. That maybe makes a lot of sense. Shulk makes sense, right? It's a rep for whatever the game is, Xenoblade. Makes sense. I've never played Xenoblade, but I'm sure that makes sense. Now, the Koopalings or whatever, right? I don't think you need them. Is that maybe a hot take? I don't know. Like, are they iconic Mario characters? Yes, but a Goomba is too. And it just doesn't feel like the Koopalings or Bowser Jr. is that much more relevant that they need to necessarily be in the game to represent Mario when there's already so much rep. I don't know. I feel like you could have a representation just elsewhere and otherwise. There's other Mario characters that are just going to be way more interesting to have as a character, in my opinion, at least. Duck Hunt, I feel like Duck Hunt makes sense to keep, but it's again another gimmicky character. But I do think Duck Hunt as like a franchise or something is relevant enough to maybe keep. So, or not maybe not necessarily relevant enough, but it's like it makes sense. Maybe it's too gimmicky. I don't know. It's probably my logic is probably not very consistent. I would say Duck Hunt you'd keep. I am thinking that you should also keep Wii Fit Trainer if you keep Duck Hunt at this current moment, which I think Wii Fit Trainer was after Little Max, so we'll just put them there. I think that's fair. I think that's a fair inclusion, probably. Ryu you keep. This is Cloud you keep. Then Corrin you delete. Bayonetta you keep, probably. Inkling you, of course, keep as well. Daisy is just an Echo Fighter. Ridley, I honestly think, this may be a hot take, F Ridley. Why would you keep Ridley? Ridley in Smash was like a gimmick. It's something people were just like asking for because it's funny. He's too big. Oh, he's not gonna fit. And then he finally fit. And now the gimmick is over. It's like, why would you care? Well, I don't think it's that relevant. Yes, should Ridley be in because of Metroid rep? Sure. Because it's just Samus, right? That you have to rep Metroid. So I guess Ridley would make sense to rep Metroid specifically a bit more. But I don't know if Ridley is the right way to rep Metroid more. It just feels like a gimmick, and it just doesn't feel like if you continue the Smash Bros. Roster, it is a necessary inclusion. But I guess that's also applicable to a lot of other characters. So I guess maybe my logic is not very consistent. I don't know. But in my opinion, Ridley is a gimmick. You don't include him. Simon and Richter or whatever, right? You want to have Castlevania rep, just make them Echo Fighters or whatever. Who cares if they currently have a distinct moveset? Just make them skins of each other. It doesn't matter. This is a character. Chrom, right? Chrom? You don't need Chrom. You already have enough character. He's literally a Roy Echo Fighter. Like, why would we care? We don't need Chrom. Roy's also be getting deleted, so you get Chrom deleted as well. Maybe Chrom is a very relevant character for what's it called? For Fire Emblem, but just make him an Echo Fighter with Marth with a shorter sword or something, right? Like, what are we doing? I don't know, man. This is the debate where it's like, oh, you could just make them Echo Fighters. Maybe that would work. I don't know. Maybe you just make all the Fire Emblem characters Echo Fighters. Every skin just has a different weapon. Maybe that's too complicated, but I don't know. Dark Samus is just Echo Fighter, right? Doesn't really matter. King K. Rool makes sense. You want to represent DK maybe a bit more. I mean, DK and Diddy Kong is fine. But K. Rool, I guess you should probably keep. Does feel a little gimmicky, but it's good Donkey Kong rep. Isabelle you keep. Ken, similar to Rio, Echo Fighter, right? Now we get to Incineroar. Look, I think by default you should say delete Incineroar because it doesn't feel like that's like a really deserved relevant spot for Smash Bros. The only argument you could really make in favor of Incineroar is it's like the rep for competitive Pokemon for VGC rights or whatever. That's like the only really like relevant argument you could make for Incineroar, but otherwise I think you just boot it. Like we don't need Incineroar. I think it's fine to get rid of Incineroar. Piranha Plant is funny. Look, it's funny, but nah. We don't... Okay, there's one argument to be had, in my opinion, for Piranha Plant to keep it, is that playstyle-wise, it's very different. It's like a trap setter to an extent, right? It's kind of like a... what was that? Like a range-based... It's a character that's, like, not very... It doesn't move as fast or as much, and it does some fun stuff. So I guess that's the debate you could have to keep Piranha Plant. But it also feels like an absolute gimmick. It feels like the Smash Ultimate gimmick that they would get rid of in the consecutive game right after. So I think this makes sense. Joker you keep, Persona 5 is huge. Hero you keep because of the game that they're from. Dragon Quest, right? Dragon Quest is big. Banjo-Kazooie, I personally don't think you need to keep. However, it was such a long ongoing thing to get Banjo-Kazooie in Smash. Getting rid of them for the following game feels like it would get a lot of backlash. Of course, deleting characters already will get a lot of backlash, but I think with specifically Banjo-Kazooie, that would be like a big one where people would not want to see it get cut. So I think it makes sense to keep him in the roster. Terry or whatever, right? This is another like fighting game rep. Probably makes sense to keep, of course. This is Byleth. Byleth, like mentioned, I think was a Fire Emblem character that I was told is relevant enough to keep, maybe. So you probably keep them. This is just me being told a certain thing about Fire Emblem and who makes sense to keep. So. In all honesty, I think my default thing regarding Fire Emblem is just, hey, get rid of like 3 of them, and then we're probably good. You know, we got rid of 3 Pokemon. We're getting rid of some of the Mario guys. We got rid of like some of the dupe reps, maybe, and some of the like gimmicky ones. I think it makes sense to get rid of some of the Fire Emblem ones, especially considering how many people complained about them. Min Min, I think this is right. Is ARMS relevant like that? Would it really make sense to keep Min Min around? I guess considering you'd be on the Switch, maybe ARMS would still be relevant, but isn't ARMS just ARMS? Is there even an ARMS 2? It just feels like a game that's super outdated in terms of if you were to make an updated Smash roster, is it really that relevant to keep around? I don't think so, honestly. I really don't think so. So I would say delete Min Min, maybe, but that's just maybe negative bias because I haven't played ARMS and I maybe don't understand the relevance of ARMS. It just doesn't feel like it's that important to include Min Min. Wasn't there also a different guy from ARMS or a different character from ARMS that people thought was going to get in, that they threw a curveball and then threw in the Min Min, which nobody expected? I don't know. Steve, Minecraft's the biggest game of all time. You have to, well, okay, Mario maybe is the biggest game. Minecraft's the most sold game of all time. You kind of have to. If you can, you kind of have to, I think, in my opinion. Sephiroth, I'm going to be super honest. I don't know where Sephiroth is from. I really don't like him being in Smash because it feels like a really gimmicky character, because it's just a character that has an unnecessarily long sword and just completely fucking wipes the floor with everyone. However, this is probably an instance where I don't understand much about Sephiroth. I don't know why he's in the game, but he probably makes sense to be in the game. If I had to guess where Sephiroth is from, I assume it's probably from either Cloud's franchise. It's probably from Cloud's franchise, right? I don't know what Cloud's franchise is called again. It's probably from the same, if I had to guess. I don't know, man. But yeah. Then you have Pyra Mythra. It's one character, but they are represented in the same thing, right? It's that's how Xenoblade in the modern version works. I think Xenoblade is I think it's a pretty popular franchise, so it makes sense to keep Keep 2 reps from the game or from Xenoblade. Maybe, honestly, I don't know how relevant Shulk is for Xenoblade compared to Pyramithra. You keep 1 of them and maybe keep the newer ones. This also kind of feels like a Gunnar character in my opinion, which is kind of like silly, but yeah, I don't know. I'd say you probably keep Pyramithra as like a duo character, and then you pick whichever one makes the most sense. I think Mithra might be the one that makes a bit more sense to have in, but whatever. Then this is Kazuya, I think, right? Makes sense to keep, and then Sora makes sense to keep. Licensing wise, it'd be a nightmare, but I think that's fair. Then from the maybes, would you really move any? Would I move characters up? I mean, the majority of these would be like Echo Fighters, right? You just essentially boot Rob out of the list, right? Rob would just be gone, and then this would just become Echo Fighter. Where like, yeah, you'd boot Rob. I don't think you could keep Toon Link or Young Link and Toon Link really if you were to do Echo Fighters. They'd have to be Echo Fighters of each other, which I guess would be fine, right? Maybe that's like how you would do it. Because they are pretty different, but I guess it makes sense. They play pretty different from... Actually, no, I do think it makes sense to keep one of them because Toon Link and Young Link represent like OG Zelda Link versus how the modern version of Link represents more of the like Switch era Link, right? I think it's fair to distinguish between the both of them. They also, yeah, they do play quite differently, so I'd say you keep one of the two. I think Toon Link looks more distinct, but maybe Young Link makes more sense to be in. So I'd say you keep Toon Link. Maybe Young Link could be an Echo Fighter of sorts. And then for the rest, yeah, Peach would just be, or Daisy would be an Echo Fighter, and then Echo Fighter is Echo Fighter. So these are just Echo Fighters. So I think this is what you would do, or what I would say you do with the Smash roster. This still leaves like, how many characters is this? If you were to just keep them and you remove Echo Fighters, which I think would be fine, but like, it'd be cool. Echo Fighter would, I guess in this instance, would just be like an alternate version as well. Maybe you just give some characters more alternate versions. Maybe there's an extra button on the Switch 2 that you can use to turn into a certain character. But this would be 59 in the keep. If you were to include the Echo Fighters into that roster, you'd go up to 71, which is still a lot because you'd probably want to add quite a few characters. Because on this list for Smash Ultimate, they added like these characters. So this is what, 11, 14 plus 15, 16. I'm not going to count Dark Samus or whatever Daisy in that. So that's 16, 17, 18, 19? Incineroar is from Ultimate, right? 19, 20, 21? 21. They added 21 characters. Damn, they had a lot of characters at least in Smash Ultimate. Is the point I'm trying to make. So you'd get rid of a bunch of them as well. Now to make room for the next list of additions. What I assume they would do for Smash Ultimate, ultimately, no pun intended, of course, is that they maybe would set a goal to reach 100 characters. Because I think if you were to put this list all together, you would have 77 plus like 87 characters. Is that correct? Including the Echo Fighters. Maybe they could keep like most of the characters around and then just do like up to 100, and then that's like Smash Ultimate, but really Smash actually Ultimate, or something like that. But yeah, this is my take. Technically, with fixing the roster for Smash Bros, I should also suggest maybe substitutions and additions to make things make a bit more sense. I already mentioned Kirby Rep. One of my main wants, or like most wanted characters for Smash Ultimate, was Bandana D. I think Bandana D would make for a very unique addition to Smash Bros. A spear fighter, you could have long range attacks, have the little helicopter attack. I think it would be super cool. Throwing a spear could be really cool. I honestly just think Bandana D would offer a lot in terms of diversifying the Smash roster. I think it'd be really cool. I do think another Pokemon rep would be cool. I do not really know specifically which character you would put in for a Pokemon rep. Maybe Zoroark or something like that could be cool if there's ever Gen 5 remakes. I think Zoroark could maybe be a very cool character, right, to introduce. Or maybe there's a different Pokemon, maybe a newer one that makes a lot more sense to include. For the rest, off memory, I mean, another Sonic rep would be cool if they could get the licensing for that. I think Knuckles or Tails or, of course, Shadow. Shadow as an Echo Fighter would be cool, maybe, but I think Shadow also would play quite differently. Shadow would be the coolest character to see in terms of like a second Sonic rep. But I also think, realistically speaking, if you want to make a more diverse roster, I think adding Knuckles or Tails offers a lot more. Maybe Amy with a hammer, but I think Kirby also kind of has that to an extent already, right? Kirby has a hammer, but Amy with the hammer would be cool. So yeah, one of those would be cool. For the rest, if I'm looking at the roster, I don't know if there's like a Mario rep that necessarily makes the most sense. You could maybe add like Ninja, which might be a bit of a gimmick, or maybe not, I don't know. For the rest, I'm trying to see. Yeah, Legends of Zelda. I do think you'd want another Legends of Zelda character. There would have to be like one of the like temple guardians or whatever, right? Or one of the like temple characters from the newer Smash, or not newer Smash, newer Zelda games like Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild. Maybe there's one of the characters there. Although I would argue that maybe you'd already have a new 3D Zelda already being talked about or maybe advertised, etc., around the time that Smash 6 technically would be looked into, right, if it were to happen. So maybe that's one that makes a bit more sense. Maybe there's a character from that makes more sense. I'm sure there's also other retro games. Tetris Block, it could be a character. There's also other, like I mentioned, just other retro games that could be fun additions. Honestly, I'm thinking about it now. This will be my final thoughts on this for now. If they add a Mario rep, they might just add the cow. That'd be cool, right? They add the frickin' cow from from the new Mario Kart game as a character. Maybe, or maybe not. I don't know. Anyways, this is my take on fixing the Smash Bros. Roster. My additions, top 3 that I've mentioned, would be 1, Bandana D for another Kirby rep, and then I don't remember what else I said, but I mentioned what I wanted. So anyways, thank you for watching. See you later. Goodbye.